Alright, it is time to discuss the fourth round of the Zodiac tournament, which is using the December 2002 list, which now has Pharaohs Servant and cards from TP2 not limited. Now, just kind of gander on through this list. You know, we don't have Yugioh. Morphing Jar is no longer at 3, which was absolutely just degenerate for what we had it. Of course, Delinquent Duo and all these other troublesome cards are still here. Upstart getting pushed directly in the list. Ceasefire as well. But we now have cards that are semi-limited, like Morphing Jar. Sanguine's still at 2, Heavy still at 2. Your big primary changes on this list were Yugioh went straight to 1. Jar is now at 1. Witch of the Black Forest, Card Destruction, which were originally at 2 at this point in the game's history, have now been pushed to 2. Or pushed to 1, excuse me. Limited Removal, Premature, Swords, Call, Ceasefire, and Pre-Order are all now at 1 at this stage. And then moving to 2, just Morphing Jar, Nobleman, Cross Out, and Backup Soldier. Now, Exodia becomes a little bit more of a relevant deck at this stage in the game, which isn't too surprising, but with the train wreck that we saw in round 3 with 3 Morphing Jar, and Burn just being a hell of a drug throughout that format, yeah, you definitely have to keep an eye on Burn and just kind of keep these things in check. But now with the release of Yugioh, are we really worried about Burn? And it's also not like Morphing Jar is not limited at this point. So, Pharaohs Servant as a set gave us some really shitty cards. At this stage in the game, we now have Yugioh, which is a secret rare. Parasite is adorable, but it doesn't really do anything. At this point in the game's history, you do not see Time Seal on this list. Time Seal is not limited, so you have 3 Mask of Darkness to recur this, and you have 3 of this. Call the Haunted at 1, unfortunately. Mirror Wall was not a defining part of this format. And to top things off, this is the first time that Force Relinquish and Appropriate come into the game. Burn decks do, however, now get Ceasefire, so you can now do some creative things like that. And we get, up until this point in the game, face-down monsters had no way to destroy them outside of your typical Dark Hole Raigeki scenarios. So we now have Nobleman Cross Out to answer these set monsters to now establish field momentum. And then same thing with Extermination. The set introduces 6 more Spell and Trap card destruction cards into the game, 3 Dust Tornado and 3 Nobleman of Extermination. But at this point in the game's history, I mean, you still have Heavy Storm running around on this list at 2. So, I mean, there's no reason. And Trinade's unlimited, and as you can see, Mystical Space Typhoon is also not on this list. So, you have so many destruction cards at your disposal. Morphing Jar 2 does a little bit for deck out, which is interesting. We still don't have our Needleworm yet, so that's okay. Cold Wave is now in this format as well. So, very interesting to see that this comes in. You got 6 more destruction, and you got 3 prevention. Limited Removal is now legal, but of course, this card, I mean, the only real stuff you have for this is Yugioh and Mechanical Chaser. Outside of that, the rest of the sets kind of booty butt cheeks. I mean, we get Thousand Eyes Restrict and 4-star Ladybug, but for spot removal, they're not excellent. And Goblin Attack Force is like the first era of beatdown. So, and we also get Fiend Mega Cyber. Outside of that, the set's actually pretty passive for what it does to the game in terms of just everything in general. But this is just this is like a modern day set of Yu-Gi-Oh! Added a few good cards to the spice, a few additional tech cards that could be later seen and possibly played. But yeah, so what kind of deck list were we looking at for this particular format? You know, what was going on here? Well, Herman Hansen ended up sending me the list that he used for this tournament, and he was telling me that this list was actually played by one of his friends. He has a young duelist friend that has participated in these previous formats. Herman said to credit Brandis for this list, so Brandis, there's the credit that you were seeking. So, 2 Heavy Storm, 3 fucking MST. What a fucking format. It's so interesting. And of course, you still got fucking Roblin Goblin down here just trying to be relevant as he is. So, let's go ahead and talk about this list and go into the metagame a little bit more. So, 1 Cyberjar, 1 Yugioh, Still 3 fucking Magician of Faith for no real reason. 1 Morphing Jar, triple Mystic Tomato, 2 Sangan, 1 Witch of the Black Forest, triple Mechanical Chaser, 1 Change of Heart, 1 Confiscation, 1 Dark Hole, 1 Delinquent Duo, 1 Heavy Storm, 2 Heavy Storm, And then 1 Monster Reborn, triple MST, 1 Nobleman Across Out, 1 Painful Choice, 1 Pot of Greed, 1 Premature, 1 Raigeki, 1 Snatch Steal, and 1 Forceful Century. Trap cards: 1 Call the Haunted, 1 Imperial Order, 1 Mere Force, triple Solemn Judgment, and 2 Trap Hole. Side deck: triple Maniac Bug for removal, triple Fissure for other removal. Obviously, you're going to be dancing around this. 2 Messenger of Peace, 1 more Crossout, triple Dust Tornado, and triple Robin Goblin. Now, keep in mind that this is near the beginning of the era where you're not building a deck unless you have some X amount of staples. And when I mentioned staples, Mere Force, Call the Haunted, Forceful Century, Snatch Steal, literally this whole row. I wouldn't consider Painful Choice a staple until a little bit later on down the road. But the thing is, a lot of people were playing Painful Choice at this stage in the format as an option to reveal 5 power cards from your deck to your opponent and force your opponent to literally pick their poison. You're using it to set up your initial game state and just go from there. Now, however, Painful Choice with Magician of Faith is absolutely just bonkers because you can just recur back. If you show Pot of Greed, you send Pot of Greed, okay, cool, Magician of Faith can get back. You dump your Raigeki or your Snatch Steal, you can get them back for literally no cost issues whatsoever. Magician of Faith at this stage in the game is one of the most ridiculous cards ever. Now, at this point, Witch of the Black Forest is now limited. So you are rotating on an axis of just getting 1 search off of this. Meanwhile, Sangan can still get you additional things. And you've got the best goddamn recruiter engine in the game now because of Mystic Tomato. Now things are becoming a little bit more defined in the fabric of the game. Recruiters, they're very staple. Now, one of the things was I was testing around with Clown Control in this format. Clown Control is still a very relevant deck and a very relevant threat next to Burn in this format. And you have to be aware of these things. The fact that we now have bullshit in this format, I don't think many people saw one of the... Yeah, right here. This was the defining point of this format. We now have Gravity Bind at this stage of the game. So, not only do you have to... Sure, you have 3 MST and double Heavy Storm, but you still have to play around Gravity Bind. And Clown Control was just such a real threat because once you were forced to play their game, which is just rotating, yeah, you were not in a good position. Now, I'm pretty sure at this point in time, 3 Solemn Judgment wasn't really stable. This is kind of something that we took years later from the game, looking back on current formats. The development that Judgment has had on the game, the fact that Judgment is just such a fucking good card. We learned this later on down the line. It took us probably a year from this point in the game to realize that Judgment was so good, especially looking back. But this is like I said, this is something that most people are considering this a staple in this format because the future told us to do it. So it's just kind of like one of those questions you ask yourself if you're playing Go Control. You're like, would I go back and play Trap Dust Shoot in that format? You're definitely going to give it some consideration and things like that. Same thing with Robin Goblin. Robin Goblin's an excellent card just because it's anytime a monster inflicts damage, not just one. So if you have multiple of these fuckers up, you're just cleaving away from your opponent's hand. This is like the beginning of the format now to where people are just kind of setting all of their resources and just not caring. Even though, yeah, there's 2 Storms in the format, but you technically have 3 Judgment and you even have Imperial Order running around for that necessary protection. So you're kind of getting there. Also, we're starting to see the era of the jar staples. Morphing Jar is not really a staple at this point because it hasn't got the initial reprint. These things are still $250 at this stage in time, which is a lot. But if you need the jar, it was available in TP2. So, yeah. That's all I really got to say about this current point in time. A lot of people have not explored this part of the format. Literally, Critters was the only real thing that was explored up until this point. There were no written guides on this format. And, the next format's going to be even worse. So, guys, what do you think about this? Thank you, Herman. Thank you, Brandis, for sharing this information. That's all I have for you guys today. Alright guys, we'll see you guys for round 5 eventually when we get the analysis up and running. The ride never ends, guys. Make sure you enable those notifications to get the latest videos that are being posted on this channel. Make sure you guys check out VanCole40 for my Cardfight Vanguard channel. And join me and House of Champions on the Zodiac Duelist TV Twitch stream. We'll be interacting with our audiences. And please check out No Limit Gaming and LGTCG.com for the cheapest trading cards on the market. Thanks for watching, guys, and please have a good day.